Hi everyone and good evening. Welcome to this special Instagram Live from Friedrich's Ataxia News today. My name is Ali McGregor and I'll be your host for this evening. Some of you may know that this is the first day of November, which means it's also the first day of Movember, which is a campaign to raise awareness, raise funds in support of men's health, and that includes men's mental health. So I'm really excited tonight to be joined by three very special guests, and we're going to be having a very open and honest conversation about men's mental health and disability. And before we get started, I just want to put a disclaimer and remind everyone that this is just a conversation. No one on this call is qualified to give any mental health advice in this forum. And understanding that this might be a sensitive topic for some of the folks watching today. It's an important topic, but it might stir up some difficult feelings and emotions, and you might want to have a conversation with someone. So if that's true, strongly encourage you to reach out to your family physician or to seek help from a licensed therapist. And if you need urgent and immediate help, if you're thinking about hurting yourself or someone else, in the United States, you can call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. In Canada, you can call Canada's Suicide Prevention Service at 1-833-456-4566. And if you're joining us from anywhere else in the world, there's a website called findahelpline.com. And if you navigate to that website, you'll be able to find services that can help you. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Sean and Matt and Kyle to join me for a conversation about men's mental health and disability. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi, Sean.
What up?
How are you guys?
Good, hanging in.
Awesome. It's so great that you're here. Thank you so much for joining me. Looks a bit sunnier where you are, Sean. Whereabouts are you today?
Well, I'm in California, but it looks like Seattle today. Overcast and a little drizzly.
Oh, okay. And Kyle, whereabouts are you joining us from?
I'm in Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia. I'm in
Awesome.
my podcast studio right now.
That's fantastic. I wish I had a podcast studio myself. I'm joining you from Toronto. So we've got two on the East
Nice.
Coast, one on the West Coast. Yeah, so it's funny because I've been listening to your podcast, so it kind of feels like I know you guys already, which is great. I'm excited to talk to you more. There's so much that I want to ask you. But just bear with me for 1 second because I can see that Matt is trying to join us as well. There we go.
Oh, Matt. That old man, he doesn't know how to work it.
Oh, Matt.
Hey,
What's up?
I figured it out.
Hey, Matt, how are you?
Man.
What's up, y'all?
Hey, buddy.
Am I sideways?
You are
Yep.
sideways.
I think you have to go vertical.
Okay, I'm vertical.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice.
Yes. But now I can see your thumb. I don't know if you guys can see Matt's thumb.
Yeah.
All right, we'll give him a second to get connected.
Yeah. All right.
So while we wait for Matt to get connected, I just wanted to note, in listening to your podcast, there's a statistic that you guys talk about a lot in that 1 in 50,000 people have Friedreich's ataxia. And in preparing for this conversation, I was doing some research on how those numbers compare with mental health. And looking in the States, it's something like 16 million people have clinical depression or have had a clinical depressive episode. So there's a stark contrast between those two numbers. And just hearing that so many people have been affected by depression, how does that make you feel?
Immediately, I can't help but think we, as a society, have a lot of work to do. Part of me, there he is.
Hey,
Welcome
Matt.
back, Matt.
Hey,
I personally can't help but think, maybe it's not new stuff, right? Maybe it's not all of a sudden we have more mental health issues. But I think with the advent or the accessibility of the internet and platforms like this, now people have a louder voice and easier to get connected and kind of showcase our challenges to the world. So that's a good starting point. We're starting to recognize as humanity, we have work to do. And a whole lot of different people in the space. You mentioned licensed professionals that are all the 1-800 numbers you listed, the website you listed. That's all stuff designed to help those 16 million plus get some of the resources they need. That's my initial take on it. We got work to do.
Yeah, and when we related to the FA community, I mean, just all the challenges associated with having a disability and a rare disease that no one even knows about. Think about how much more prevalent it is in our community specifically, but then also the rare disease community overall. So and I will say at the same time, while I have not been diagnosed ever with depression, it's also a little bit comforting to know that other people are struggling. I think that's very comforting to me because we all struggle, everyone. And whether it's diagnosed or not as a certain thing with a name on it, everyone is struggling every day in their heads, in their lives. And, well, yeah, I would think every day there's certainly a challenge to everyone a lot of the times, and it's something that we don't see. And I appreciate this conversation because we're talking about it. So
Absolutely. Matt, so just before you joined us, I was just saying there's a lot of people in the United States that have reported clinical depression, 16 million people, according to one of the sources that I referenced. And I know you personally have some background professionally in mental health. And does that track with your education and your experience in that field?
Oh, absolutely, man. Honestly, I think this goes for a lot of the mental health professionals. Don't tell them I told you, but a lot of us get into it because we want to fix ourselves, and that was a big, not the only reason, but a big impetus for me getting into that field because depression is something that is so commonplace. Maybe not everybody is diagnosed with that, but everybody knows what it's like to go through a hard day and go through times where you can't see the light. And that comes especially when you're dealing with a rare disease like FA or like any other disorder that you can see that guides your everyday, it seems like, and that really colors how you see the world. And I want to be a voice to help people within that, to help people see through that and see beyond that. So, yeah, I really understand how depression is very commonplace nowadays, but I think it's awesome that it is getting more awareness, like Kyle said in this talk and in those guys' podcasts and in the avenue where it's something that everyone can talk about and everybody can see, hey, I'm not as alone as I maybe thought I was.
Absolutely. So the reason all of us are on this call tonight is for Movember. And originally, Movember started as an initiative just generally about men's mental health, physical health, focused on testicular cancer. But more recently, they've expanded their mandate to addressing male suicide, because 4 out of 5 suicides are completed by men, which is a shocking statistic. And men are much more likely to report feelings of loneliness, mental health challenges like depression that we discussed, but they're also much more less likely to seek professional help or to talk to anyone about it. And when I was listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast, both of you, Kyle and Sean, you have a lot of episodes about talking about difficult feelings, about talking about mental health. And I just wanted to ask you, when did that start to become a normal conversation for you? When did you first start feeling comfortable opening up about what you were experiencing on that emotional, personal, mental level? And Kyle, maybe we can start with you.
I was just thinking, Sean and I have had mentions and conversations we've been doing our podcast for 5 years now. And I feel like we've mentioned it and talked about it and tried to find experts. We'd have a psychologist on every once in a while, and we try to approach the subject. But then there was one episode where we did this survey, and I asked Sean a bunch of questions about FA, and I feel like it kind of triggered, like, all right, here's a structured way to like talk about this stuff. And I feel like we were able to get a little bit deeper, and I feel like that kind of flipped the switch to to be like, all right, this feels good, first of all, and I think it might be valuable here. And so, I think that a lot of our conversations kind of took on that tone a little bit of the sort of emotional and mental challenge side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sean, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would. The episode Kyle is referring to was probably one of our favorites, and we just did it this season. I don't remember the number, but last 4 to 6 weeks, maybe. It's not very old. But I would say, we've had conversations in the past. We've had different psychologists join us as well. And to answer the question specifically, when or how did we get comfortable talking about it, I think for me, I can't recall a specific comment, but thinking about it, nobody has ever reached out to us and asked us how to, hey, Kyle, how do you get your beard like that? Or, how do you guys get where do you find your word choices? Nobody's ever asked us about vocabulary or clothing choices. People have always asked how to deal with this challenge mentally or emotionally. How do you overcome this feeling of loneliness or solitude? And it's those questions that help us realize that I don't know that there are too many, at least in the rare disease space, there aren't too many people that care what kind of makeup we buy. And neither one of us buy makeup, but I'm just thinking, the influencer world and other, TikTok or whatever, nobody's asking us what kind of car we drive or how we spend our money. But instead, people are constantly reaching out about how to talk to their kid or how to deal with this condition or this fear that they have, whatever it may be. And I think those comments and inquiries really help push me toward doing the episodes like Kyle mentioned more often, because obviously there's a need for that, and people want that kind of content. There's a whole lot of value in that. Not that there isn't value in knowing what makeup Matt buys, but there's probably more value in knowing how we approach the challenges we all face.
Yeah, that's a theme that I've noticed with all three of you guys is there's definitely, I would say, a growth mindset, a great deal of resilience that all of you communicate in your columns, in your book, in your podcast. That's certainly a theme. Matt, you call your column for FA News today, Little Victories. What was the inspiration behind that title, and why is that what spoke to you and what you wanted to write about?
For most of my life, my, uh, sorry,
All good.
I am so bad at this. I'm sorry.
I just want to
No.
say a really extra special thank you to Matt for agreeing to do this. I did coerce him into this Instagram Live experience,
Yeah, yeah.
and I appreciate it very much, Matt. Trust me.
We're interrupting Matt's Jeopardy time right now. This is not okay.
Okay, okay, but so pointing out victories. Ever since my diagnosis, I was diagnosed when I was 11. Like, and
Matt, I'm really sorry. I don't know, Sean and Kyle, can you hear Matt, or is it breaking up for you too? I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
Matt.
Oh no.
I sometimes have this challenge when I have 3 people on an Instagram Live. I'm so sorry. Um, Maybe could you jump off and jump on again, and we'll try again? Would that be okay?
yep,
I'm so sorry, Matt.
no problem.
I'm going to have to send Matt all of the Halloween candy after this
Yeah,
interview.
yeah. Hey, Allie, I'm sure you did it or you will, but I do also want to say a big thank you to there's a handful of people in here, leaving comments and whatnot. So thank you guys for joining in the conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so great to see so many people engaged. So many people are excited. I saw one person comment, "Thank you for putting this conversation on the table." So I think that's just an acknowledgement that there is still a degree of stigma around mental health, and people still might feel a little bit reluctant to talk about it openly.
Well, I think one of the big things for me is how how do you do it, right? Like I was saying, you know, there he is again.
I'm here.
Welcome
Can,
back, Matt.
can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
you sound great.
Great.
yes.
Are y'all talking or shall I go?
Actually, you know what?
All,
Oh, go
oh,
ahead, Kyle.
um, go ahead, Matt. I can hold my comment. Yeah.
You asked me why my column was called Little Victories.
Yes.
Because pointing out little victories is something new for me. When I was diagnosed at 11, my life was a pattern of just debilitation, and everything was getting bleaker. And there was a point where it was like, why go on? I think to some extent everybody reaches that point. Why live on another day? Why fight on? And I didn't have a good enough answer, I guess. Through years of reading, a study, of even a degree in counseling, I saw the importance of pointing out the reasons for sustaining, for keeping on. And I call that little victories. When you point out the things in your life that maybe you couldn't even notice, but something that gives you the drive to live on for another day. And that changed everything for me. And I hope that it will positively affect others. So that's why I went with that title for my column, because it changed my life, and I only hope that it can have some effect on someone. So no.
Love that, Matt. And you know what? Kyle asked a really good question that I'm so glad that you joined back for, because Kyle was asking, how do you start conversations about mental health? And you are the resident counselor on this conversation. How would you recommend people open up those kinds of conversations?
Okay, I will jump back to Sean's answer. Sean said how nobody asked us about, the kind of clothes we wear or whatnot. In a lot of ways, that is, frankly, because we have FA. Because we have Friedreich's ataxia, a rare disease that people can see. Because a lot of people, our MO is to hide the things that we don't like, that we don't want to talk about. But with FA, there is no hiding it. You get what you get when you deal with us. So, people, rightly or wrongly, think that we're in tune with those kinds of things. So that's why they're comfortable asking us about stuff like that when, we wouldn't go up to a stranger and ask them, hey, are you depressed? Tell me about it. But since we have something, obviously, that we're dealing with, people are able to approach us in that way, which can be really intrusive, and we can see it that way. But in another way, we can be really welcoming and see that as really a strength that we have to be able to bypass superficiality and get right into the meat of things. Like, tell me what you exist for. Why do you not commit suicide? Because those are the real questions. Those are the ones that the answer means something. And I think it's a privilege to be able to ask that of others.
Wow. I had no idea that people felt comfortable saying those kinds of things just because of what you live with. Is that something that all three of you have experienced? That kind of conversation?
Yeah, just recent experiences for me. It's happened twice now. Two different people, probably in the last 4 to 6 weeks. Just given the obvious elements of FA, and I guess maybe the part of the way I carry myself in conversation, I've had two people in different conversations about some diagnosis that isn't obvious. Obviously, without giving any names, HIV is pretty ugly. It's life threatening. There's a lot of devastation that comes with that. And for somebody to, in our first hangout session together, they say, "Hey, I just want to throw it out there, but I'm HIV positive, and I love hearing about you. Hearing how you talk through your life. I want some of that." And a friendship blossoms out of that shared, I guess, challenge, if you will. Even though our challenges are completely different, just knowing that everybody has hard things. I've personally, just in the last month or so, have realized there's a lot of value when we look or go beyond the surface and really share life to an extent. That doesn't mean walk around with a billboard sign that says all your issues or concerns, but certainly when you want to connect on a deeper level, it's not going to be about the kind of car you drive or how much money you have in the bank. It's going to be about how you wake up and get through days. Some of them really hard, some of them just okay. But like Matt said it, or one of you said it, we all have bad days. Everybody's going to have a bad day. And some of us might have bad weeks or bad years. When you have a buddy to talk to or to work through it with, it's a whole lot easier.
Absolutely. And I just wonder too, all three of you have public platforms, and I wonder if that maybe makes you a little bit more accessible, and if starting to share your story publicly, you've noticed that more people feel comfortable. Like even I said at the beginning of this interview, I kind of feel like I know you just because I've had your voices in my ears for the last number of weeks, and Matt, I read your words, and so, you get to know someone online. So how do you feel about that limitation being removed in terms of someone feeling like they know you and being able to be intrusive and being able to ask you questions as if they've known you a long time just by virtue of having this public platform?
I think it's a little daunting. Like, I think, it takes energy. Every interaction takes energy. This interaction right now, right? It's
Yeah.
it's good energy, but I think when we're public like this, and like Matt and Sean, we've all been reached out to multiple times, and every single one of those interactions takes a lot of energy because you want to do it right. Right? You want to serve your friends, you want to be part of the community. And so I think, for me, sometimes when it gets real intense, that's one of the tough things for me is trying to balance. All right, what do I need, and what can I give away to others? I don't know if that even answers your question, but those are my thoughts.
Absolutely. And it leads me to another question. Kyle and Sean and Matt, where do you look for support for your mental health when your energy is depleted or
Mm.
when you need to receive rather than give of yourself? Where do you turn for that support?
Round table pizza. Man, I love pizza. Yeah, that was a silly joke. So I gotta think about it. I don't know,
No,
Matt, if you
I
got something at the top of your head, I gotta think about this for a second.
um I know that I, unlike these two guys, am introverted. So I like to recharge by myself. That is like how I use strength when maybe like Kyle said, it gets daunting to have other people always reach out to you. But I also want to say that in some ways that is actually a boon, you know. Um to have people look up to you, you better be doing stuff right, or you better be attempting to do stuff right, you know? You can't have someone look up to you and think, oh crap, just another day, I don't feel like getting out of bed, you know? You have to be on your game, and you have to give them a reason that um, maybe overblown, maybe they think you're a little too much of a hero, and, frankly, I'm not, so... I don't, well, they kind of are, but I'm not. But
Yeah, you are.
just, if someone is going through some hard stuff, and they're reaching out to me or maybe you guys, that is a reason that, oh my gosh, we have so much to be grateful for, to be on the ball, to be thankful for, to recognize the little victories, to um
Mm.
So it is daunting to have other people look up to us in some ways, and it also is kind of a way to keep us in track and keep us aligned.
What do you guys think of
So,
that, Sean, Kyle?
I am, Matt started his comment by saying he's an introvert and he spends time alone, and I am the total opposite. And I think recognize, and I have to reach out to friends. I cannot be alone if I'm having a tough time. And I think it's important to recognize that everyone is different, and neither one of even though we're total opposites, me and Matt get along really well. He knows I called him in some tough times, but I guess the point is neither one of those approaches is wrong, or we're just different people. And I think recognizing that, because I think I beat myself up because I'm not like other people. We probably all do at a certain level, right? Oh, I should be doing this because that's what everybody else is doing, or that's what this person that I look up to is doing. No, I do what I need to do, and Matt does what he needs to do, right? And that's how we get along.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess to answer more legitimately, I lean on podcasts. I guess in a sense, maybe I'm a blend of both. I don't get anxiety being around people. I do enjoy and feed off the energy of being with friends and playing games and having a glass of wine or whatever, being in good company. But I also tend to recharge when I'm not with people. So whether that's taking a weekend by myself or, maybe just visiting family where it's not a big chaotic weekend of 12 people, it's just me and my mom or, a small group. But on the day-to-day, like week to week, I listen to podcasts, I read a little bit, or do an audiobook. Along those lines, I will say Matt's probably one of the best writers I've ever known personally, and I do find a lot of value reading his column. And I see some other comments here. A lot of people agree, and so I'll encourage you, if you haven't read Matt's stuff yet, he's got a style, and it's, when I feel, I write a little bit too. And if I'm up against a deadline and I just don't have anything jumping out at me, I'll read Matt's work and see if something inspires a thought with me. And I'm always entertained and intrigued by his stuff.
I agree. You can check out Matt's column at friedrichsataxianews.com, and it's called Little Victories. And Sean, your column is called No Good Excuses, correct?
Yep.
All right, because we're going to send people to read your columns too. I want to shout out to another FA News Today columnist, Kendall Harvey. Again, harkening back to your podcast, I listened to an episode where you were both inspired by a column she had written, reflecting on the 8 years since her diagnosis and writing a letter to her younger self. And I have to say, it was a really emotional podcast to listen to hear you guys write to your younger selves. Is that something that you've done again since recording that podcast? Or can you tell me a little bit about what it was like to write to 17-year-old Kyle and I think 25-year-old Sean?
It was very emotional. You felt what we were feeling during our recording, and I think we even tried to tone down the emotion. I think Sean was editing, and I think he probably took out some of my sobbing and stuff because it was quite emotional, but it was ultimately really relieving, right, to talk about all that stuff. One of the things that we talked about subsequently, I think the episode actually came out yesterday or maybe even today, but is that just putting those things out there and realizing, even though I'm crying and I'm saying all this stuff, that Sean doesn't think I'm a jerk or an idiot because of that, and getting it out there and realizing, all right, the world's not ending. No one's unfriending me. And if they are, whatever, it doesn't matter anyway. But, my friends are going to stick around no matter what I expose to them. If I'm exposing myself, it's...
Oh, we lost you for a second there, Kyle, your audio.
Sorry about that. Yeah,
there we go.
Here we are. But I guess my last point was, if I'm exposing my true self, it's only going to strengthen the relationships that are important in my life, I think.
Great perspective. Sean, what about you? When you look back on that episode, when you look back on that process, have you done it again? Would you do it again?
We haven't done it since that recording, but I've done similar, exercises leading up to that. So I've done them in the past, but we do have at least one idea to do another similar letter to a future version of ourselves down the road. And I think we'll keep doing them. We'll do them again. I just find a lot of power in them, a lot of freedom. When you kind of force yourself to slow down and enter that mindset of being 25 again, or 16 or 50 or whatever it may be, and you actually take the energy to sit there for a minute, you start to think and feel things that we don't in our day to day because we're so busy or we're overwhelmed with life, a job, kids, whatever it may be. So absolutely, I think we'll do it again. And although emotional and challenging, it's eye-opening at the same time. In fact, I'd encourage everybody to do it or something similar.
And Matt, you weren't part of that episode, but I'm just wondering, have you ever done that exercise and written to your younger self?
I have never done that, but I can tell you I was crying during that episode. I can't even imagine doing that. That would be so difficult, but so important. I think, and thank you guys for bringing that up because that's an important an important exercise that I never thought of doing, but it will be so. I really need to do it. Hold me to it, and I'll do it.
All right. Well, I gotta say again, thank you, Kendall, for inspiring the idea. She started that snowball without even probably knowing it would be a bit of a snowball.
Yeah, Kendall's awesome. Kendall also has a column on FA News Today, so please go over and check it out. We've got lots of great writers on the site. Something that's coming up here in this conversation is just the importance of friendship. Matt just asked you guys to hold him accountable to do that exercise. You've all three of you have talked about how you inspire each other, you support each other, and just wondering, if someone is feeling isolated right now, and they don't know how to reach out to someone and ask them for support, do you have any advice for them to open up that conversation? I know, Matt, you talked about how some people just walk up to you and they ask really intrusive questions. So perhaps they might be intimidated to ask for help. But what is maybe a low stakes way that they could seek guidance from someone else in their community?
I think email is a simple way. Email anyone, especially people like us, and I'm sure those guys, I'm not trying to speak for them, but people who are willing to hear you out and hear you, whatever you're going through. We've probably been there before, so we understand, and let us see if we can figure out something together. And I think that would be a good way. Just finding people who are eager to hear from you, I think, is key. Don't just post on Facebook what your day is like, but find a friend or somebody who's really there for you and let them know what you're going through. And then you'll get good feedback, and then you'll probably be able to move forward together with someone.
Let me add, I think Matt makes a good point, and it's not so much that there is one way or a right way to do something, but for whatever it's worth, I don't scroll Facebook, and in the rare instance that I do see somebody, post something kind of blanket like, I don't know the best way to say it, when they just throw it out there for everybody, I'm not one to take that to heart. So I don't respond. I don't know if that makes me a jerk or insensitive, but if somebody were to message me or email me directly or tag me somewhere and sort of, in a sense, reveal something that's difficult or challenging or whatever the word might be, then I'm more likely to lend a hand or an ear or find a way to connect with them. And I again, that's not right or wrong. It's probably not the best way to approach it, but I sometimes struggle, and I've seen this even with people that I'm close with or family. I struggle between, personally, is it a cry for help or a cry for attention? And I know I shouldn't judge, but one means more than the other, in my opinion.
Yeah, I appreciate your honesty, Sean. I think that's something that folks aren't really comfortable talking about, but it's a well taken point. Kyle, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I was just thinking, I think that like so just social media, and I mean, I'm thinking of Facebook groups. There's a Facebook group called FAers Only, and that's what it is. It's only people with FA are allowed in this group, right? And I don't necessarily, well, so I think there's value in just observing, right? And looking at what other people are saying. And I think that could be, uh, whether it's a Facebook group or a hashtag on Instagram or Twitter or whatever you want, observing and finding your spot to like Sean said, reveal whatever, and that could be a good entry point, is observing it first.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I should absolutely mention that FA News Today also has forums for folks in the FA community. So please check those out at friedrichsataxianews.com as well. It's great that we have the internet. There's so many opportunities to find support, to find connection, to find people who have had similar experiences to you. Again, harkening back to your podcast, you recently did an interview with a gentleman from the UK, and he identified that there was a need for support groups specifically for men in the rare disease community, specifically around mental health. And I thought it was a really interesting thing that he noticed that this was a need, and then he decided to start something. Are any of you connected to anything, either in person or virtually, that's more of a formal support group for men and mental health?
I'm going to have to say no.
No. Is this something that you see as a need in North America? This guy was from the UK, and I know there are some differences between North America and the UK and how they are handling mental health and what services are available.
Actually, that guy, David Ross, he just invited me to their Facebook group, so it's a support group, so I'm eager to hear from others in that group. And yeah, like Sean said, that is not something I would say I have a solid or regular support group or anything like that, but that is something that is so needed, especially for guys with the rare diseases. I think that's huge.
Yeah, I think I would also, yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking about the different stages of life, right? Sometimes you might need, like you said, something formal, and other times you may not. But I certainly recognize that there's always some support system that we need to be connected to. Maybe that is just family or some really good friends. Maybe it is something more formal. I've been there. I've needed some formal support, when I went through career change and marital status change and a bunch of other things, 10, 12 years ago. But currently, I'm not engaged in anything formal myself.
I think it speaks to the fact that mental health is a journey. And like
Yeah.
you said, and just even your journey with FA, but even just those regular things that are happening in your life, like marriage, job change, those are two huge things that you talked about, Sean. And there are so many other big things that happen in our lives every single day. Obviously, having FA is part of who you are, but it doesn't necessarily define you. So how do you distinguish between those parts of yourself, and remind yourself, or perhaps more importantly, remind other people that you are more than just your diagnosis? Don't all jump at once.
Uh, that is a challenge, you know. That is something I and maybe you two guys too, but something I grapple with every day. How much of Matt is Matt and how much of Matt is FA? And is that the entirety of who I am? And a fun little analogy that me and Kyle thought of is I had one day written about the Roadrunner and the coyote, the cartoon coyote chasing the Roadrunner, and how he was defined by his attempt to catch the Roadrunner, and that there was no coyote except the one that was chasing the Roadrunner and trying to catch that. And in that way, I related to FA, and our goal is to end FA and to receive a treatment for FA. And Kyle is the one who pointed out to me, like, that isn't the entirety of who we are. Like, if FA was cured, then we would go on and we would find something else. Our grave wouldn't read, "Here lies Matt, he really wanted to cure FA." It'd be, "Here lies Matt, he was a pretty cool guy and he also had FA, And I think that is a monumental shift, letting something define you and dictate how your life is going to be, and defining yourself for your own terms. And, letting the external sources be external, and not letting yourself be defined by whatever you are diagnosed with or whatever you're going through.
Kyle, Sean, anything to add?
I agree 1000% with that. I also don't think we should beat ourselves up if we feel like we're defined by FA or whatever we're dealing with. I think that's okay. It's probably not true, but we can certainly feel like that a lot, right? That FA is such a big presence in our life that it's defining who we are. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Maybe I'm just justifying because it's become such a big presence in my life. But like Matt says, I think it's a really good point. Like, when we do find the cure, we're gonna find something else to do. Like, we're not gonna keep searching for the cure for FA, So yeah.
This concept, if you will, is something I feel like I've wrestled with just lately. It came up in a conversation Kyle and I had, I think just last week. We did an episode or an interview with Patrick James Lynch, and this concept was discussed. So I feel like it's kind of fresh for me right now. So I guess maybe I'll preface, I feel like there might be a column coming out of this conversation. But ultimately, yeah, I don't know. But I feel like FA, although I don't allow it to identify me or define me, there is certainly an element of it. But I feel like I wouldn't be living my life the way I do if it wasn't for FA. And so for me, I see FA as kind of a motivator, and a lot of pressure to rise to the surface more than most people. I think my brain's scattered right now, so forgive me. But, Kyle and I did that bike race across country, and sure, we raised some attention and awareness, and over the years, that's helped to raise money toward research. There's parts of me today that thinks when it comes to the bike, I have nothing to prove. I've already done more than most people. But because I live with FA, I have a lot to prove, and I'm going to keep proving it, so that when that day comes where somebody does make my headstone, it's not about how much work he did on behalf of FA, but more so about how much shit he got done because of FA. Excuse my language.
No.
You know, Sean, I was reading your Instagram bio and I did quite a bit of research to prepare for this conversation. And like I said at the beginning of this conversation, all three of you strike me with your growth mindset, your very positive attitude, your resilience. Pushing forward, I think, is a concept that I would use to describe all three of you. And your bio, Sean, says there is always a reason to keep moving forward. Um, and I think that says something for all three of you. I think that's really the impression that all of you have made on me and so many people watching today, so many people who are looking to you as examples in the FA community. I certainly don't want you to feel any more pressure than I think you already do with that responsibility. But I just think it's commendable that you're just very positive people. Sean, I wanted to talk to you specifically about something called determinants. Can you tell folks what that is and the idea behind that?
Yeah, so thank you. Determinants is the nonprofit I started a couple of years after being diagnosed. In the face of that diagnosis, I had some friends shortly after we learned what I was up against. We did some day hikes and did some runs and a half marathon, little things like that, and recognized that a lot of people were quote unquote inspired and encouraged by that. And I began to realize that there's nothing special about running a marathon or a 5K to some degree. But when people realize that maybe you're you're missing a leg and you're competing, or you have some challenge that most quote unquote normal people don't have, the way that they draw some motivation and inspiration from that, I began to realize that a lot of people desire to experience that kind of triumph in their own life, disease or no disease, and too often we think it's going to be too hard or impossible. So the idea behind determinants was to help people, especially in the disease or disability space, get out of the house and accomplish something under their own power to an extent, whether that's climbing a mountain or riding their bike across town or cross country. The idea is for determinants to come alongside them with a little bit of muscle or help procure the equipment necessary to get them to the top of that mountain, or participate in that neighborhood 5K, whatever it may be. There's something beautiful in experiencing that kind of triumph and crossing the finish line, however big or small it is. And determinants exist to help people do just that.
That's awesome. Thank you for telling us more about it.
Thanks for
Kyle,
asking.
yeah, no problem. I was very intrigued by that. And Kyle, I feel like that's something that maybe resonates with you too, as someone who's taken on, some pretty impressive feats of physicality, doing things that there's no way you couldn't pay me enough to ride a bike across the country. So how did you motivate yourself to do that? What was that experience like? I want to mention also that you're the subject of a documentary called The Ataxian, where people can see your story. Sean, you're in there too. But I want to hear it from you.
Well, I think the motivation really is that, like, I just wanted to ride my trike. It's my favorite thing in the world to do. And so I don't need motivation or incentive. Like, it's intrinsically there. Like, I just want to do that. And so riding my bike, every day for 59 days, like, there's nothing better than that, And so I'm grateful that it turned into an opportunity to, connect with other people and face challenges together. I don't want to pretend that I'm only helping other people, because that is totally not what's happening. it's a relationship, right? And it's a give and take, I think. But really, the physicality of it is just, that's all I want to do. And so I'm gonna train as much as I need to be able to do those things.
That's awesome. And I feel like we're coming full circle on this idea of mental health, and part of taking care of yourself is doing those things that you enjoy doing. It's like, it sounds like that's a form of self-care for you, Kyle.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing too that I didn't mention when you asked before, what do you do to take care of yourself? I get on my stationary trainer and I work myself to a pulp and sweat dripping down, and I feel like worlds different from when I started till when I ended. But yeah, I mean, it's about finding those things, and really, it's not that for everyone, right? It's not that for very many people, maybe, it's important to be seeking that thing that is going to make us to that thing that we're going to be able to lean on in tough time, I think.
For sure. And again, knowing yourself, knowing what you love to do, and nurturing that part of yourself. That's
Right.
awesome. Guys, this has been a really fantastic conversation. I've enjoyed talking to all three of you. Thank you so much for making the time. Before we wrap up tonight, I just wanted to give you each an opportunity to plug anything exciting that's going on in your world, anything you're working on, anything that you would love for people to check out. I know I want everyone to go read Matt's column.
Yep.
But is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience today? Sean, you can start.
Yeah, I will just encourage listeners, I guess, for the podcast. Kyle and I, on a weekly basis, broken up in seasons, we do our best to tackle conversations like this and deal with reality or beyond the surface kind of stuff. So for those of you that don't listen, I would encourage you to check out the Two Disabled Dudes podcast and join us there also.
Thank you. Kyle, what about you?
I want to plug Ride Ataxia. We're starting to get back into in-person events. In fact, we have one next weekend, and it's just a really incredible way to get out there and meet the community. And yeah, and I'll see Matt next weekend at Ride Ataxia, and but it's just a great way to connect with others. Even if you don't ride a bike or a trike or anything, just come out and meet the community and get involved. So I would encourage everybody to check out rideataxia.org and find an event that they can go to.
Awesome. Thank you. And Matt, people want you to write a book, and they're also asking you what makeup you wear. So I don't know where you want to take this.
Yes.
The floor is
Thank you,
yours.
Vlad.
Yeah, I don't know what makeup I'm wearing.
Some devil.
Yeah, just listen to their podcast. It's really good.
And read
Thanks,
Matt's
Matt.
column. You're too modest, Matt,
definitely.
honestly.
Read Matt's stuff. He's good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, last thing, I want to underline something Kyle said. That is okay to feel like you're defined by whatever you're going through. I didn't mean to, I don't want anybody to think that I'm poo-pooing that or talking that down, because I've been there and I still go there. I go through that often. And, being defined by your circumstances is a normal challenge, but it's not a defeating challenge. It's something you can overcome. So I just want to encourage anyone who listens to this that you are not you are not the thing that makes your life more difficult. You're more important than that, and you're worth a whole lot more than that.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Beautiful.
That's a beautiful way to end it. And again, thank you, Kyle, Sean, Matt. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for your energy. Thank you for the laughs. You guys are a lot of fun, and I'm going to continue listening and reading all of your stuff. So thanks so much for the time.
Thanks, Allie.
Thank
Have a
Have a
great
great
night.
night. Thanks,
Great.
guys.
And thanks everyone for tuning in.
Hey, bye, y'all.
Bye.